the Galactic Empire had promised when they issued their ultimatum: submit or be destroyed. On paper, Earth's fleets were outmatched 1,000 to 1. Politicians folded, admirals surrendered, but not everyone. Commander Nathan Cade wasn't one for politics. He'd spent the last 15 years buried in Black Ops programs deep beneath the Nevada wastelands. No medals, no recognition, just classified files and unfinished prototypes. And the Valkyrie, his ship. It wasn't even supposed to fly. The brass had scrapped the project a year ago. Too unstable, too aggressive, too human. The AI was considered borderline psychotic, its weapon systems illegal under 3 separate galactic treaties. In the end, the Valkyrie had been left to rot in its underground cradle. Forgotten. But Cade never forgot. When the Empire's invasion fleet entered Sol space, blotting out the stars with their shimmering armada, Cade made a choice. He overrode the lockdown codes, forced a cold start ignition, and dragged the half-finished monster back to life. Now, as the Valkyrie cut silently through the dark, every console flickering red from the ship's raw, unstable core, Cade knew there was no going back. The rest of Earth had surrendered. The official fleets had been dismantled. No backup was coming. Didn't matter. He wasn't flying for Earth anymore. He was flying for himself, for the crew that had been reassigned, for the engineers who'd vanished when they protested the shutdown, for the girl who'd been executed when her father refused to hand over the ship's final schematics. He gritted his teeth as the first wave of Imperial cruisers came into view. Sleek, gold-hulled monstrosities, arrogant in their formation. The Empire thought it was an extermination mission. No need for caution, no need for strategy. Arrogance, their fatal mistake. "Targeting locked," the ship's voice whispered through the comms. The AI wasn't sane, but it was loyal. To him, Cade's fingers danced across the firing matrix. "No mercy." The first salvo was not a warning shot. 6 cruisers vaporized instantly, their shields ripped apart by weapons the Empire didn't even know humans had designed. Plasma beams lanced across the void, tearing holes through the Imperial formation. Alarms blared. Panicked chatter filled enemy channels. They hadn't expected resistance, certainly not from a ghost ship. More ships warped in, dozens, hundreds. It didn't matter. The Valkyrie was faster, meaner, and no longer bound by outdated treaties or committee oversight. Her AI adapted in real time, rewriting attack vectors, exploiting every blind spot. The body count climbed. Wreckage littered the black. An entire Imperial armada, crumbling under the guns of one forgotten warship. Cade's pulse thundered in his ears. This wasn't survival anymore. This was vengeance, for every human life the Empire had dismissed, for every coward in Earth's government who'd handed the planet over on a silver platter. A desperate transmission cut through the chaos, a message from the Imperial flagship. "Unknown vessel. Cease fire. Identify yourself. You are violating—" Cade keyed the comm open, voice cold. "I'm Commander Nathan Cade, and I'm not here to negotiate." And with that, he unleashed hell. The stars burned with debris. Chunks of twisted gold and blackened steel spun past the Valkyrie as she prowled through the wreckage field. Cade sat hunched in his command chair, eyes burning with focus, knuckles white on the armrests. The adrenaline hadn't faded. If anything, it was sharpening. On the holo display, the Imperial fleet's main formation had begun to fracture. What had started as a precise, arrogant blockade was now a chaotic scramble for survival. They hadn't just lost cruisers. They'd lost control. But Cade wasn't finished. The Valkyrie's AI pulsed through the ship's core like a living thing, her voice low and hungry. 78 enemy vessels remaining. Imperial flagship has repositioned behind outer ring, uploading new firing solutions. Cade leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Pursue, no survivors. This wasn't strategy anymore. This was butchery, and he meant every second of it. He thought of the message that had gone out 2 days ago, Earth's official surrender. A coward's transmission, sent by the Global Council as the Empire's fleet approached. No resistance, no bloodshed, just roll over and obey. But there had been bloodshed. The Empire didn't take peaceful submission. They took everything. Cities burned, dissidents executed, entire orbital colonies vented into space. His own brother, a systems engineer at the lunar shipyards, had been one of the first to vanish when the Empire seized control of Earth's military projects. No one even dared speak his name anymore. Cade clenched his jaw. Feed me their targeting data. The ship's interface lit up. Clusters of enemy ships pinged across the display, desperate formations spinning out of sync. They weren't used to losing. They weren't used to fear. But they were learning. Now the Valkyrie pivoted, thrusters burning hot, slicing through the debris cloud with inhuman agility. The ship was still unfinished. Only 70% of her systems had been fully tested. But that made her more dangerous, not less. No Imperial ship could predict what the prototype might do next. Another Imperial cruiser loomed ahead, its hull already scarred from glancing plasma hits. Too slow, too exposed. Engage. The railgun batteries fired in a blistering pulse, hyper-accelerated slugs punching through the cruiser's shields like wet paper. The enemy ship erupted in a cascade of flame and shattered metal, its spine snapping in half. Another kill. No hesitation. No remorse. A tremor rippled through the deck as a return salvo streaked past the Valkyrie's bow. Missed. Barely. The Imperial gunners were getting desperate now, throwing volume over precision. Cade's lips twisted into a grim smile. They're rattled. Keep pressure. But the AI's voice cut in sharply. Incoming hyperspace signature. Large mass, multiple drive signatures, Imperial reinforcements. Cade's blood went cold. Reinforcements. That meant one thing. The Empire was taking him seriously now. Good. About time. He punched in a scan command. The sensor array hummed, projecting the new contacts onto the tactical display. 27 additional warships, including 3 heavy dreadnoughts, the Empire's elite siege vessels, each one armed with enough firepower to flatten entire continents. The AI whispered again. Fleet estimates updated. Total enemy force now exceeds 100 vessels. Cade stared at the display. The numbers didn't matter. He wasn't going to run. He wasn't going to hide. Not now. He toggled ship-wide comms. All hands, battle stations. We've poked the nest. Time to burn it down. The Valkyrie was technically a one-man ship. The AI controlled most systems autonomously. But Cade had brought a skeleton crew of trusted veterans when he launched. People like him, forgotten, angry, with nothing left to lose. Lieutenant Marcus Hale, former gunnery chief, came on comms. Rail batteries recharged, Commander. We're locked and ready. Bastards want to fight. We'll give it to them. Cade's mouth twitched in grim satisfaction. Good, because they're coming fast. The display shifted, hyperspace distortions flaring as the Imperial dreadnoughts emerged into real space. Enormous, brutal shapes, flanked by escort cruisers and fighter wings. An entire Imperial strike group, all for one ship, one human war machine. Cade's voice dropped low. We hold the line. The Valkyrie surged forward, cutting straight toward the new arrivals. No retreat, no hesitation. The first wave of Imperial fighters screamed in, small and fast, darting through the wreckage field. Too many for railguns. But Cade had something better. Release the coil drones. Venting ports opened along the hull, unleashing swarms of AI-driven attack drones, their surfaces glowing with unstable energy. The drones spiraled into the fighter formation like a storm of knives, shredding enemy craft in seconds. Pilots barely had time to scream before they were vaporized. Behind them, the dreadnoughts opened fire, broadside plasma lances and mass driver shells turning space into a hellish storm. The Valkyrie danced between the volleys, shields flaring and armor plating absorbing glancing hits. Cade's hands moved instinctively, guiding the ship through the storm. This was what he was born for. Not peace, not politics, combat, real brutal combat. The AI spoke again, faster now, her voice almost eager. Dreadnought Alpha exposed. Forward shield array failing. Cade didn't hesitate. Target primary core. Fire. The prototype's main plasma lance ignited, a beam of pure annihilation that cut straight through the lead dreadnought's defenses. The massive warship convulsed, secondary explosions ripping through its decks. Moments later, it detonated in a blinding burst, fragments scattering in every direction. One dreadnought down. The second dreadnought's captain broadcast a furious demand. Identify yourself. What human ship dares defy the Empire? Cade opened the channel, voice ice cold. I'm the ghost you left behind. And he killed the link. No more words. Only war. The second and third dreadnoughts pressed in, their escorts tightening formation, trying to box the Valkyrie in. Cade adjusted trajectory. Closer, not away. He wasn't going to dance around them. He was going to get right in their faces. All power to forward shields. Prepare for close assault. The AI acknowledged, diverting energy as Cade pushed the ship straight through the enemy blockade. Fighters and cruisers scrambled to block his path. Too late. The Valkyrie fired a full spread of disruptor torpedoes, tearing open the enemy formation like a blade through flesh. Then he was on them. Point blank. Railguns hammered the second dreadnought's engines, crippling its maneuvering systems. Plasma beams carved glowing scars across its hull. Return fire battered the Valkyrie's shields to the brink. Alarms screamed. Warning lights flickered. But Cade didn't stop. He pushed closer until the two ships were nearly touching, until his ship's weapons were locked directly onto the dreadnought's exposed reactor vents. Fire! The reactor breach was instantaneous. The dreadnought vanished in a roiling implosion, taking a dozen escorts with it. 2 down. But the Valkyrie was bleeding now. The ship's systems screamed under the strain. Shield generators overloaded, hull fractures along the port side, life support flickering in several decks. Didn't matter. Cade wiped blood from a cut on his brow, eyes locked on the last dreadnought. He wasn't done yet, not until the entire fleet was ash and ruin. Plot intercept, final run. The AI's voice wavered, for once uncertain. Hull integrity critical. Odds of survival. Cade cut her off. I didn't ask for odds. Do it. The ship surged forward again. One last brutal charge. If this was going to be the end, it would be an end written in enemy blood and shattered metal. And Cade would be the one holding the trigger. The Valkyrie's engines howled as the prototype warship hurtled toward the last Imperial dreadnought. The ship was wounded, badly. Hull fractures glowed red, and coolant leaked into space in shimmering clouds. Shields were down to 20%. Structural integrity alarms blared in Cade's ears. Didn't matter. He wasn't stopping. Maximum thrust, Cade ordered through gritted teeth, voice hoarse from smoke and blood. The command chair shuddered beneath him, heat radiating through the deck plates. The AI's voice buzzed in the comms, steady but strained. Main engines at 150% capacity, hull stress critical, proceeding. Cade's vision narrowed on the tactical display. The final dreadnought loomed ahead, a titanic slab of imperial arrogance, bristling with guns and shield projectors. Around it, a dense screen of heavy cruisers and fighter wings closed ranks, the last shield between Cade and the heart of the Empire's armada. Good. Let them come. Feed me their targeting patterns. Data streamed across the display. Enemy weapons cycling, fighter squadrons adjusting intercept vectors. The Imperial ships were scared now, but determined. They weren't going to give him an easy path. Cade keyed the ship-wide comms. Crew, brace for final assault. We punch through or we die. No halfway. Down in engineering, Marcus Hale's gravel voice came back. With you to the end, Commander. Let's gut these bastards. The comms clicked off. No speeches. No heroics. They all knew what was at stake. Earth was already lost, its leadership on its knees. This fight wasn't about saving the planet anymore. This was about sending a message, one the Empire would never forget. Deploy remaining drones. Focus fire on central cruisers. The AI complied. The last swarm of coil drones launched from the ruptured hull, spiraling through the black. Moments later, the first enemy cruisers erupted in flame, their formations breaking under the withering assault. The gap was opening. Cade gritted his teeth and slammed the maneuvering thrusters, hurling the Valkyrie through the breach at bone-crushing velocity. The wounded warship rattled and groaned, but held. Enemy fighters swarmed, their cannons flashing. Impacts shuddered through the ship, tearing fresh wounds across the battered hull. The prototype's armor flaked and split, but Cade ignored the damage warnings. He locked eyes on the dreadnought. Bring me within plasma lance range. Acknowledged. Course plotted, the distance closed. 1 kilometer. 800 meters. 600. Too close for capital-grade weapons. Exactly where Cade wanted to be. The dreadnought's captain finally opened a broad-spectrum broadcast, desperation leaking through the polished tone. Human vessel, cease your assault. You cannot win. Power down and surrender or face annihilation. Cade's lip curled in a snarl. He keyed the comm open. I already faced annihilation when your Empire slaughtered my people. Now it's your turn. He cut the channel. Firing solution on primary reactor. Locked. The Valkyrie's main plasma lance charged, its core thrumming like a living heart. The AI's voice warned of overload. Cade ignored it. Fire. A blinding beam of plasma carved through the void, slamming into the dreadnought's midsection. Shields collapsed under the focused assault, armor blistering and venting atmosphere. But the dreadnought was no easy kill. Return fire hammered the Valkyrie, a punishing barrage of plasma bursts and rail slugs. The prototype's hull split further, systems failing across multiple decks. Fires raged in the lower levels. Hull breach on decks 5 through 7. Cade wiped blood from his brow. Keep firing. The second lance struck home, punching deeper into the dreadnought's superstructure. Secondary explosions rippled across the enemy ship as reactors overloaded. But the Imperials weren't finished. A squadron of heavy bombers broke through the drone screen, racing toward the wounded Valkyrie with torpedo locks. Incoming bombers. Impact in 15 seconds. Cade's mind raced. Shields were too weak to tank a direct hit. Maneuvering options were limited. The ship was bleeding power. No way to dodge. Unless... Divert all remaining power to starboard thrusters. Prepare for drift turn. The AI hesitated. Executing. The Valkyrie rolled hard to starboard, venting compressed plasma to force an uncontrolled spin. The torpedoes streaked past, missing by meters, detonating harmlessly in the wreckage field. Cade forced the ship upright, vision swimming from the G-forces. The dreadnought was crippled now, its engines dark, its weapons faltering. One final blow would finish it. Target bridge. Full railgun spread. Locked. The rail batteries fired in unison, hyper-accelerated slugs tearing through the enemy bridge. A moment later, the massive ship began to break apart, its spine fracturing as internal fires consumed it. 3 dreadnoughts. Gone. But victory came at a price. The Valkyrie was nearly dead, hull integrity below 30%. Multiple decks vented, power reserves critical. And the battle wasn't over. New contacts detected. Imperial carrier group inbound. Cade's fists tightened. The Empire was throwing everything at him now. He'd gutted their armada, but they weren't giving up. Yet neither was he. Plot course toward the carrier group. We take as many with us as we can. Understood. He leaned back, exhaling a ragged breath. The smoke in the air stung his eyes. Blood dripped from a cut along his temple. His body screamed for rest. But there was no rest. Not yet. The comms crackled again. This time it wasn't the Imperials. Unknown human vessel. This is Resistance Outpost 7. We are receiving your signal. Do you copy? Cade blinked. Resistance? He hadn't thought there was anything left. He keyed the communication. This is Commander Nathan Cade of the prototype warship Valkyrie. I'm engaging the Imperial fleet. Status of Outpost 7? A tense voice replied. Holding. Barely. We saw your attack. You just took out half the Imperial command fleet. We didn't think anyone was left fighting. Cade's voice was cold steel. I'm still fighting, and I'm not finished yet. The outpost commander hesitated. We can provide targeting data on the carriers. If you can keep them occupied, we have a chance to hit their logistics lines. You don't have to do this alone. Cade's eyes narrowed. Send the data. He paused. And tell your people, we're not beaten yet. The link clicked off. Data poured onto Cade's display. Weak points, carrier positions, escort patterns. A grim smile tugged at his mouth. One more fight, one last dance. AI, rote power to engines. Take us in. Acknowledged. Plotting intercept course. The Valkyrie turned toward the oncoming carrier group, engines screaming. A battered ghost ship, held together by sheer defiance. Nathan Cade's war wasn't over, not until the last Imperial ship burned. The Valkyrie tore through the blackness, a wounded predator chasing the scent of fresh blood. Ahead, the Imperial carrier group swelled in the tactical display, 6 massive capital-class carriers, each bristling with fighter launch bays, support frigates, and destroyer escorts, the Empire's last line. If they fell, the entire invasion fleet would collapse. Cade wiped soot from his cheek and checked the flickering system's readouts. The Valkyrie was barely holding together now, portside plating gone, several weapons offline, and hull integrity at less than 25%. But the core was still burning. The main drives still pushed. The Lance batteries still had one good shot left in them. And Cade? He still had one purpose. Kill the bastards. Every last one. The AI's voice filtered through the battered comms system. Carrier group in range, enemy fighter wings launching, incoming interceptors. Cade's jaw tightened. Let them come. On the tactical grid, hundreds of fighter signatures flared to life, spreading out into an attack formation. Sleek Imperial Striker-class interceptors, small, fast, armed to the teeth. Against a crippled warship like the Valkyrie, they should have been a death sentence. Should have. Cade keyed the command console. Release remaining coil drones. Set to point defense. Prioritize interceptors. The AI responded instantly. Deploying. All surviving drones engaged. Venting ports along the fractured hull hissed, spitting out the last of the ship's AI-driven drone swarm. The drones spiraled outward in chaotic orbits, weapons hot, targeting the first wave of fighters. The space between the ships lit up like a war zone. Drones and interceptors tangled in a brutal ballet, fighters exploding under precision drone strikes, while a few slipped through to pepper the Valkyrie's hull with plasma rounds. Cade grimaced as the deck lurched under a fresh impact. Damage report. Mid-deck plating breached. Internal fires spreading. Power at 19%. Main plasma lance at 62% charge. It wasn't enough. Not for 6 carriers. He needed something else. Something bigger. That's when the Resistance transmission came back online. Valkyrie, this is Resistance Outpost 7. Targeting data uploaded. Carrier group logistics lines are exposed. Fuel depots and resupply transports trailing behind the main formation. If you can force the carriers to maneuver, we can hit their rear. Cade's eyes narrowed. A faint smile twitched at the corner of his mouth. A chance. A sliver of hope. Understood. I'll draw their fire. You hit those lines hard. Tell your gunners, no mercy. Copy that, Commander. Good hunting. The channel went dead. Cade shifted focus to the enemy formation. The carriers were still advancing in tight formation, shielded by escorts, confident in their superiority. Too confident. He keyed the AI again. Plot an attack vector. Fast and direct. We punch through their escort screen. The AI pulsed. Course plotted. Estimated survival probability, 8%. Cade snorted. That's higher than I expected. Let's go. The engines flared as the Valkyrie surged forward, straight into the teeth of the carrier group. Plasma bursts and rail slugs streaked past the hull. Fighters dove in for strafing runs. The wounded prototype kept coming. Closer. Closer. Prepare Lance for simultaneous multi-carrier strike, Cade ordered. When I say fire, you dump the core. A beat of hesitation. The AI's voice flickered with uncertainty. Dumping the core will result in total energy failure. Ship will be adrift. Cade's eyes burned with cold resolve. I know. Do it anyway. This was the end game. One shot. All in. Either he broke their line here, or the Empire would roll over Earth unopposed. Final firing vector locked. The AI's voice had lost its hesitation now. It understood. This wasn't about survival anymore. This was about revenge. 5 kilometers. 3. 2. Enemy fire intensified, slamming the Valkyrie's already crippled shields. Sections of the ship went dark. Fires spread uncontrolled. But the ship held together. Barely. Just long enough. Now! The main plasma lance ignited, firing at full charge, then overcharged as the ship's unstable core dumped everything into the beam. The lance split into multiple streams, forking in mid-space to strike across 3 separate carriers. The impact was catastrophic. Shields collapsed, armor melted. Secondary explosions rippled through the carriers as munitions detonated in their holds. 2 carriers crippled instantly, a third engulfed in fire, its command tower spiraling away into space. But the price was paid. The Valkyrie's core went dark. Lights flickered out across the bridge. The engines sputtered to a halt. The ship was dead in the water. Cade sat in the gloom, chest heaving. Sweat dripped from his brow. The faint glow of the cracked displays showed the unfolding chaos. Imperial formations breaking, fighters scrambling. And then, new flashes on the grid. Resistance missiles. Hundreds of them, screaming in from behind the carriers, targeting their exposed logistics lines. The Empire never saw it coming. Fuel transports erupted in chain reactions. Ammunition ships vanished in blossoms of fire. The surviving carriers began to turn, trying to retreat. But too late. Their supply chain was gone. The invasion fleet was crippled. Cade exhaled a ragged breath. He could barely move. The ship's systems were failing one by one. The bridge was freezing as life support shut down. But he watched the enemy burn. And in that moment, he smiled. The comms crackled weakly. The Resistance officer's voice came through, faint but triumphant. "Valkyrie, we see it! The fleet is breaking! They're retreating!" Cade forced himself upright, voice hoarse. "Finish them. Chase them to the edge of the system if you have to." A pause. Then, understood. "And Commander, thank you. We owe you everything." Cade leaned back in the ruined command chair, letting the cold seep into his bones. The battle was won. At least for now, but deep inside he knew this wasn't the end. Not yet. The Empire wouldn't forget this day, wouldn't forgive the loss of their armada, their dreadnoughts, their prized carriers, all destroyed by a single prototype and a man they'd written off as dead. And when they came again, he'd be ready, if he lived long enough. The AI's voice flickered, faint now, barely audible. Core offline, hull breaches spreading, emergency beacon transmitting. Cade closed his eyes. Good. Someone will find us. And if they didn't? He'd still made damn sure the Empire remembered his name. Nathan Cade, commander of the Valkyrie, the man who turned an entire armada into ashes, and his war was only beginning. Nathan Cade drifted in the darkness of the ruined command deck, half-conscious, pulse slowing. The Valkyrie was dead around him. Systems cold, hull breached in over a dozen places, gravity flickering in and out. Only the emergency beacon still pulsed faintly through the void. He could taste iron in his mouth. Blood. His side burned. He wasn't sure how deep the shrapnel had gone. But pain was good. Pain meant he was alive. For now. Somewhere distant, the AI's voice crackled through the failing speakers. Emergency beacon transmitting. Resistance vessels approaching. Estimated arrival, 10 minutes. Cade let out a shuddering breath. He'd bought them the chance they needed. The Imperial fleet was in full retreat, crippled, scattered, their logistics in flames. No planetary invasion now. No orbital bombardments. Earth would live another day. But the war was far from over. The resistance wasn't strong enough to hold off a full Imperial counterstrike. And Cade knew damn well the Empire would send one. They'd be boiling with rage, hungry for revenge. He'd humiliated them. One man, one ship, an unforgivable insult. The groan of tortured metal echoed through the dark. Another hull section gave way. He could feel the air thinning, cold seeping into his bones. Come on, just a little longer. The AI's voice flickered again. Multiple resistance craft on approach vector, establishing communication. A crackle of static filled the air, then a rough voice came through. Valkyrie, this is Captain Renault of the Resistance Corvette Huntsman. We're tracking your beacon. Moving to dock. Cade forced himself upright, swaying in the near-weightless gloom. His head spun. He keyed the comm manually, fingers trembling. Acknowledged, Huntsman. Docking ports damaged. Recommend hard seal breach on starboard airlock. Copy that. Prepping boarding team now. Hang tight, Commander. We're getting you out. He slumped back, exhaling. Finally. But even as relief bled in, so did something colder. Unease, because he'd felt the moment when the tide of battle shifted, when the Empire's command ships fell and the fleet broke ranks. It hadn't been simple panic. It had been something more. Calculated. Ordered. Someone on the Imperial side had known when to cut their losses, and that meant someone powerful had survived. Someone who would be coming for him. The first sign of the boarding team was the dull thump of magnetic clamps locking onto the battered hull. A moment later, the hiss of a plasma cutter slicing through the warped airlock. A harsh light flooded the dark as the breach opened. Resistance team, moving in. Commander Cade, respond. Cade coughed, forcing his voice through cracked lips. Here. Deck 1. Bridge. Boots pounded on the scorched metal. Shapes loomed through the haze. Resistance fighters in patched armor, rifles ready. A grizzled man with a gray-streaked beard knelt beside Cade. Medic, he's alive. Get him stable. He looked down at Cade, grim and respectful. Hell of a fight you gave them, Commander. The whole damn fleet's talking about it. Cade's voice was rough. Not done yet. He grabbed the man's arm. How bad is it out there? The man hesitated. Carriers are wrecked. The dreadnoughts are gone. Empire's pulling back to the outer system. But they won't stay gone. Cade's jaw tightened. No, they won't. Get me a secure channel when we're clear. You need a med bay, sir. Later, channel first. The man didn't argue. That was the kind of man Cade was now, the one who could gut an armada alone. When he spoke, they listened. They pulled him out of the Valkyrie on a stretcher, through smoke and cold vacuum, into the Spartan corridors of the Huntsman. He barely felt the medics patching his wounds, injecting synth blood and painkillers. His mind was locked on what came next. When they wheeled him into a small comms room, Cade pulled himself upright, sweat beading on his pale skin. The comm officer keyed a secure link. Resistance High Command patched through. The screen flickered. The face that appeared was gaunt, hard-eyed, a woman in battered combat fatigues. Commander Adrienne Voss, Resistance Military Lead for the Sol sector. Her voice was blunt. Cade, you're supposed to be dead. He smirked faintly. Not yet. You did the impossible. A pause. You also painted a target on every one of us. The Empire's going to hit back, hard. Cade's eyes sharpened. Which is why we hit them first. Voss leaned forward, wary. You've got something in mind. The Valkyrie's databanks survived. Cade's voice was iron. Tactical logs, weapon telemetry, full scans of Imperial fleet movements, including their fallback routes. Voss blinked. That got her attention. You can track them. More than that. Cade gripped the edge of the console. I know where their reinforcements are staging. If we move fast, we can gut their second wave before it jumps. Voss was silent a moment, calculating. Then, you'll need a ship. Cade's mouth twisted. Valkyrie's gone, but her core systems can be salvaged. We rebuild. Smarter, meaner. Voss gave a sharp nod. I'll authorize it. You'll have top priority on resources. A hard look. But you're going to be a hunted man now, Cade. The Empire won't stop. He met her gaze, eyes burning cold. Neither will I. The days that followed blurred into a haze of pain and purpose. Cade spent 2 weeks in the Resistance medbay, his body rebuilt piece by piece, ribs plated, nerves regenerated, muscle torn and regrown. The medics said it would take months to fully recover. Cade was back on his feet in 6 days. He didn't have time for weakness. Not with what was coming. He spent every waking hour with the Resistance engineers, poring over the Valkyrie's salvaged systems, the damaged AI core, the unstable plasma lances, the drone control arrays. What they couldn't repair, they redesigned. What they couldn't rebuild, they weaponized in new ways. Voss came to see him on the 6th night. She found him in the hangar, standing before the gutted remains of the Valkyrie's core, eyes hollow from sleepless nights. You should be resting. Rest is for the dead. His voice was low. And I'm not dead yet. She folded her arms. You've got every tech team in the fleet working this project. You're building something different. Cade's lips curled faintly. Something the Empire won't see coming. He turned, face shadowed by the flickering lights. A ship with no name, no signature, no allegiance, built for one purpose, to hunt. Voss met his gaze, grim approval in her eyes. Then we'd better pray it's enough. But in the dark corners of space, the Empire was already stirring. On a shattered moon orbiting Jupiter's shadow side, a lone Imperial flagship anchored in deep dock, one of the few that had escaped Cade's massacre. A tall figure stood on the bridge, clad in black command armor, eyes cold as the void. Admiral Severin Cord, commander of the Imperial punitive fleets. He watched the tactical replay of the battle, the destruction of the carriers, the fall of the dreadnoughts. Over and over, fists clenched behind his back. One man, he said quietly. "One ship." The aide at his side swallowed nervously. "Sir, the fleet is requesting orders. The Emperor expects a response." Cord's eyes narrowed to slits. "He'll have it." He turned, voice sharp as a blade. "Dispatch the Black Sigil squadrons, mobilize the hunter-killers, and put a price on Cade's head so high even his allies will consider betraying him." A cruel smile touched his lips. "We'll drag him from whatever hole he crawls into, and when we do, there will be no ship, no grave, no memory." Cade stood alone in the cavernous underground hangar, deep beneath what had once been a decommissioned mining base on Europa. The Resistance had converted it into a covert shipyard. Now it was the most dangerous secret in Sol space. Above him, suspended in magnetic clamps, his new ship was taking shape. It wasn't a rebuild of the Valkyrie. That ship was gone. Too damaged, too exposed. No, this was something entirely different. Smaller, faster, meaner. No official designation, no registry, no call sign. A ghost. The text called it Project Revenant, because that's what Cade had become. A man back from the dead, and this ship would be his sword. He circled the exposed superstructure slowly, every step deliberate. Composite alloy armor adapted from scavenged Imperial tech and experimental human designs. A hybrid reactor core that could power short cloaking bursts. Modular hardpoints for variable weapon loads, railguns, plasma lances, gravity shear torpedoes. And at its heart, the salvaged AI core of the Valkyrie, now reinstalled in a new quantum lattice. Smarter, faster, stripped of restrictions. A machine built for war, a ship built for the hunt. Cade's reflection shimmered in the dark alloy of the hull. The man staring back at him was changed. Thinner, harder. The scars across his face and arms were permanent reminders of what he'd survived, and of what he still had to do. Footsteps echoed behind him. He didn't turn. He already knew the tread, light, precise. Commander Voss. "She'll be ready in a week," Voss said quietly, coming to stand beside him. "Faster than any capital ship, cloaked from every known scanner, and with that AI of yours running her systems, she'll be unstoppable," Cade finished. His voice was low steel. Voss gave a humorless smile. "We'd better hope so. The net is tightening." She handed him a datapad. Cade scanned it quickly. Imperial fleet movements, new orders, bounty alerts. "Severin Cord," Cade murmured, eyes narrowing. "They're sending him." Voss nodded grimly. "Cord's fleet is already in system. 3 hunter-killer groups and 2 Black Sigil strike wings. They've locked the outer lanes. Every Resistance outpost in Sol is on alert." Cade's jaw clenched. He'd studied Cord. Ruthless, methodical, the Emperor's personal enforcer. The man didn't take prisoners, and he never failed. Until now. "They think they can box me in," Cade said softly. "But I'm not going to run." Voss met his gaze. "You're planning to hit him." Not a question. Cade's eyes burned cold. "I'm going to take the fight to him, before he can strike first." Voss exhaled slowly. "That's suicide, Cade. The Revenant isn't even combat tested." Cade's voice was flat. Neither was the Valkyrie, and we saw how that turned out. Over the next 6 days, Project Revenant neared completion. Cade lived in the shipyard, working side by side with the engineers, tuning systems, calibrating weapons, testing the rebuilt AI. The AI's voice had changed. Smoother, colder, with a sharper edge of autonomy. It remembered everything. The battle, the wreck of the Valkyrie, the kills. Now it wanted more. "Primary weapon systems online," it reported on the 7th morning. "Cloaking matrix at 87% stability, reactor core stable." Cade stood on the new command deck, a sleek, angular space stripped of excess. Every display was streamlined, every system optimized for single operator control. One man, one ship, no hesitation. "Initiate final systems check," he ordered. "Confirmed." A pause, then, "Welcome aboard, Commander Cade." "Revenant is ready for war." Cade allowed himself the barest hint of a smile. "Good. Plot a course." Meanwhile, in the shadow of Jupiter, Admiral Severin Cord was already moving. On the bridge of the Imperial Dreadnought Judicator, Cord stood before a massive holo display, Cade's bounty notice rotating in the air, a flashing crimson marker. "Target is confirmed alive. New ship detected. Unspecified resistance class," his aide reported. "All outer system traffic is being monitored. No known safe corridors remain." Cord's mouth twisted in a cold smile. "No corridor is safe from us." He turned to his fleet captains. "Deploy Black Sigil strike teams to every resistance asset. I want Cade flushed out, his allies destroyed, and when he comes up for air..." The smile vanished. "I'll finish what their fleet failed to do." Back in the Europa shipyard, the last clamps released. Revenant drifted free, engines humming softly, weapons charged. Cade sat in the command chair, one hand resting on the throttle. "Signal Commander Voss," he ordered. The comms link flared. "Voss here. Go ahead, Cade." His voice was calm. "I'm launching. Going dark. No further transmissions until after the strike." A pause. Voss sounded tight. "You're sure about this?" "This is why we built her." Another beat. Then Voss said quietly, "Good hunting, Cade." He keyed the link closed. "Engage cloaking. Full burn. Take me to the outer ring." "Course set. Cloak engaged. No Imperial detection." Revenant vanished into the void. He moved like a shadow, cutting through the gas giant's outer orbit lanes, running silent. The Imperial net was thick. Frigates, patrol wings, recon drones, but Cade wove through them unseen. On the tactical map, Cord's flagship Judicator loomed like a hungry beast deep in Callisto orbit, surrounded by 3 full hunter-killer groups, a fortress. But Cade wasn't here to fight the whole fleet. He was here for one kill, Severin Cord. He studied the fleet's formation, hunting for patterns, vulnerabilities, timing. Cord would never expect a direct strike. Not so soon, not with a prototype. He'd be waiting for resistance raids, not a knife aimed at his throat. "Update on flagship shield protocols," Cade ordered. "Secondary shield harmonics detected. Vulnerable during resupply cycles. Estimated window, 7 minutes during munitions transfer." Cade's eyes gleamed cold. "That's our opening." Hours later, the window came. Cord's fleet shifted, supply barges docking with the Judicator, shield harmonics fluctuating as power was rerouted. Cade was already in position. Revenant coasting silent above the ecliptic plane, cloaked, powered down to minimal emissions. "Target lock acquired," the AI whispered. Cade's breath was steady. "Prepare gravity shear torpedoes. Primary salvo." "Arming." Below, the Imperial flagship hung in space, its massive flanks exposed, escorts drifting nearby. Confident. Unaware. "Fire!" 3 torpedoes launched, accelerating silently, undetectable until impact. Cade watched the timers count down, heart a cold drumbeat. Impact. The Judicator's starboard side buckled and twisted, hull plating crumpling under the gravitational shear. Internal explosions followed, rippling through the dreadnought. Sirens wailed, Imperial ships scattered. Cade was already moving. "Break cloak, full burn, hit them again." Railguns fired, carving through the chaos. Gun batteries destroyed, engine banks ruptured. Through the smoke and debris, the comms crackled. Cord's voice, icy with rage. "Cade, you arrogant bastard, you think this will stop me?" Cade keyed his comms, voice like a blade. I'm not here to stop you, Cord. I'm here to kill you. He drove Revenant through the heart of the fleet, one ship against an empire, leaving wreckage in his wake. And the hunt had only just begun. The Revenant sliced through the carnage like a blade of shadow. Cade's hands moved with deadly precision over the controls, every movement deliberate, efficient. The ship was an extension of his will, silent, brutal, merciless. On the display, the Judicator reeled. The gravity-shear torpedoes had torn through its flank, collapsing entire decks. Fires raged across its spine, power systems flickering, venting atmosphere into space. But Cade knew better than to think it was over. The Empire hadn't crowned Severin Cord its most feared admiral because he went down easy. The comm crackled with renewed rage. "Cade, stand down. You think you can gut the Empire with a stolen ship and a grudge?" Cade's mouth twisted into a humorless smile. "No." His voice was calm, steady. "But I can start the bleeding. You'll die for this. You've made yourself a plague." Cade's reply was simple. "Then you'd better hope you find a cure before I kill you." The Imperial fleet scrambled to respond. Frigates moved to intercept. Strike wings launched, fighters screaming from hangar bays. But they were too slow, too disorganized. Revenant slipped through the gaps, cloaking and decloaking in rapid bursts, weapons hot. Rail slugs lanced out, tearing fighters to shreds before they could organize. Cade's mind was cold, focused, no hesitation, no mercy. He drove the ship hard toward the wounded Judicator, weaving through fire, ignoring the hull warnings blaring across the consoles. The AI processed threats faster than any human crew could, marking targets, predicting trajectories. "Forward batteries targeting. Prioritize the bridge." The AI hesitated a fraction of a second. "Acknowledged." Cade knew it wasn't protocol. The Empire's codes prohibited direct strikes on command structures without formal declaration. He didn't give a damn about the Empire's codes. He was here for Cord's blood. The Revenant's main batteries charged, plasma lances primed. Cade angled the ship to maximize penetration. No glancing blows, no second chances. The bridge of the Judicator loomed ahead, a massive armored blister at the prow of the dreadnought. "Fire!" Twin beams of plasma screamed through space, searing through the weakened armor. The first lance punched deep, melting through bulkheads. The second struck lower, rupturing the bridge supports. Explosions ripped through the dreadnought's command deck. The holodisplay flared, multiple critical breaches detected. Life support failing, gravity destabilizing. Cade leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Is he dead?" The AI's voice was grim. "No confirmed kill. Enemy escape pods launched. Flagship in critical failure. Fleet communications disrupted." Cade clenched his jaw. Of course. Cord wasn't the type to die on the bridge. He was a survivor. Like Cade, he'd cut his way out and run if it meant living to retaliate. And Cade wasn't about to let that happen. "Track the escape pods. Find his." The AI needed only seconds. Pod Alpha 1-7 detected. Evading pattern initiated. 4 escort fighters inbound. Cade keyed the thrusters. "Engage." The chase was brutal. Cord's escape pod shot through the wreckage, zigzagging between debris, flanked by his escort fighters. The fighters laid down heavy suppressive fire, forcing Cade to juke and weave, dodging plasma bursts that would tear the Revenant apart in a single hit. But the fighters weren't fast enough. The Revenant was a different breed, stripped of excess mass, its thrusters tuned for rapid lateral bursts. It moved like a ghost, too fast for the escort pilots to keep locked. Cade let the AI handle the evasions. His eyes were locked on the pod. The coward inside. Severin Cord, the architect of 1,000 atrocities, the man who would have crushed Earth beneath an iron heel. Not today. "Target the pod's drive section. Disable. Don't destroy." "Locked!" Cade squeezed the trigger. A rail slug lanced out, precise, surgical, and the pod's thrusters exploded in a silent flash. It tumbled, dead in space. The escort fighters broke formation, flaring off to regroup. Cade didn't chase them. They weren't the mission. He slid the Revenant in close to the tumbling pod, magnetic clamps locking on. For a moment, silence. Cade sat in the chair, breathing slow, measured. Then he rose, crossing to the weapons locker at the rear of the bridge. A sidearm. Standard-issue combat pistol. Simple. Reliable. No fancy tricks. He clipped it to his belt, sealed his helmet, and cycled the airlock. The boarding tube extended with a metallic screech, clamps digging into the pod's hull. Cade moved through it without hurry, boots clanking on the magnetic plating. The pod's hatch was warped from the rail hit, barely sealed. Cade holstered the pistol, braced his hands, and ripped the door open. Inside, smoke and darkness. Cord was strapped into a crash harness, blood trailing from a gash along his forehead. His eyes locked onto Cade's, and for the first time, Cade saw something that wasn't arrogance or rage. Fear. Cord tried to speak, but Cade didn't give him the chance. He stepped forward, drew the pistol, and pressed it to the Admiral's forehead. "Nathan Cade," Cord spat, blood on his teeth. "You're a dead man walking." Cade's finger hovered over the trigger. It would be easy. So damn easy. A simple pull. One life snuffed out. Justice, delivered without ceremony. But Cade hesitated. Not out of mercy, out of calculation. Cord's death would make him a martyr, fuel for Imperial propaganda, a ghost for the Empire to rally around. Cade didn't want a martyr. He wanted a message. He leaned in close, voice low and dangerous. "You're going to live, Cord. You're going to crawl back to your Emperor, and you're going to tell him exactly what happened here." Cord's lips curled in disgust. "You think this will scare us?" Cade smiled, a cold, humorless thing. "I'm not trying to scare you. I'm showing you how easy it is to bleed." Without another word, he holstered the pistol and slammed the emergency evac beacon on the pod's console. A distress signal would go out, an automatic call for Imperial rescue teams. He turned and walked away, boots ringing hollow in the ruined pod. Back on the Revenant, Cade stripped his helmet, sitting heavily in the command chair. The AI's voice filtered through the speakers. "Escape pod beacon transmitting. Imperial response estimated in 7 minutes." Cade exhaled slowly. "We're done here. Plot course out of system. Cloak engaged." "Acknowledged. Jump point plotted." The engines spooled up, silent, unseen. As the Revenant slipped away into the void, Cade watched the tactical screen, the flicker of Imperial ships closing on Cord's beacon. He knew what would happen next. Cord would live, but he'd be broken, humiliated. And every time he closed his eyes, he'd see the ship that had gutted his fleet, the man who had spared his life only to damn him. Nathan Cade. No longer just a fugitive, no longer just a rebel, a plague on the Empire's conscience, a reckoning. The Revenant coasted through deep space, silent and unseen. The Imperial fleet behind it lay in chaos, Severin Cord's flagship crippled, his pride shattered. The distress beacon Cade had triggered would ensure the Admiral lived. Broken, humiliated, carrying the scar of this battle with him for the rest of his life. But Cade wasn't satisfied. Not yet. He sat in the dim command chair, eyes locked on the starfield ahead. His body ached from the fight, bruised and battered. But his mind burned sharper than ever. This wasn't the end. It was only the first blow. "Status report," he ordered. The AI responded in its cold, even tone. "All Imperial pursuit ships evaded. Long-range scans clear. Jump drive at 87% readiness. We will reach Resistance safe zone in 12 hours. Cade leaned back, exhaling. Good. But he knew the Empire wouldn't let this go unanswered. Cord would be wounded, yes, but he was no fool. He would regroup, and the Emperor would send more fleets, more assassins. The hunt would only intensify. Cade smiled coldly. Let them come. He'd spent years operating in the shadows. One ship, one crew, one mission. Now the entire Resistance saw what was possible. One man with the will to strike back could turn an entire fleet. And they would strike again. Harder, smarter, meaner. 12 hours later, Revenant slid into the hidden docks of Resistance Outpost 7, a hollowed asteroid deep in the Kuiper Belt, invisible to Imperial scans. As the ship docked, Cade rose, every movement deliberate despite the exhaustion pulling at his limbs. When the airlock cycled open, Commander Voss was waiting. Her expression was grim, but there was a flicker of something new in her eyes. Respect. You made it back, she said simply. Cade's voice was flat. Cord's flagship is crippled. He'll live, barely, and now he knows exactly what's hunting him. Voss nodded. And the Empire knows you're more than a symbol. You're a threat. She handed him a datapad. Intercepted Imperial transmissions. Cord's already issued a sector-wide kill order. They've tripled the bounty on your head. Black Sigil teams are scouring the outer colonies. Cade scanned the data. Hunter-killer groups mobilized. Surveillance nets tightened. Fleet movements escalating. Good. That meant they were bleeding. That meant the Empire had been forced to shift resources, to spread thinner, expose new gaps. He looked up at Voss. Then it's time to hit them again. The war that followed was unlike anything the Empire had faced. Revenant became a ghost of the void, appearing without warning, striking with surgical precision, vanishing before a response could form. Imperial supply lines collapsed. Fuel convoys detonated in deep space, forward bases gutted, strike fleets ambushed mid-jump. And always the same signature was left behind, a burn-scarred fragment of hull plating marked with a single name, Revenant. Nathan Cade's legend spread like wildfire across the resistance channels, among the oppressed colonies, even whispered in the terrified comms of Imperial captains. The man who hunts fleets. The ghost ship. Cade's plague. The Emperor raged. New fleets were dispatched. Cord himself led hunting parties, but found nothing. Revenant was always one step ahead. Cade had built a network. Former fleet officers, resistance spies, rogue AI cores, all feeding him intelligence. He moved through the cracks, striking where the Empire was weakest. And the more they hunted him, the more they exposed their own vulnerabilities. But Cade wasn't fighting for glory. He was fighting for one purpose: to bleed the Empire dry, to show the galaxy that they could fall, that no armada was invincible, no admiral untouchable, no emperor immortal. 1 month after the attack on the Judicator, Cade met again with Voss, this time in a hardened war room deep beneath the asteroid base. The room buzzed with activity. Resistance leaders from across Sol gathered, watching hollow displays of Imperial movements. Voss gestured him over. You've shaken the sector. The Empire's bleeding resources from other fronts just to chase you. Cade studied the tactical maps, Imperial deployments thinning on the Sirius front, the Orion Corridor, even Alpha Centauri. Perfect. Voss's voice dropped. We've identified a critical target. She tapped a blinking marker on the display. Imperial deep dock at Epsilon Eridani, staging ground for their next wave. If we hit it hard, cripple their repair capacity, we buy the Resistance 6 months, maybe more. Cade's eyes gleamed cold. Revenant will lead the strike. Voss hesitated. It's deep in Imperial space, heavily fortified. The risk... We've made them bleed, Cade interrupted. Now we show them how deep the wound can go. Preparations began immediately. Cade personally oversaw the loading of specialized warheads, disruptor torpedoes, EMP charges, prototype nanoswarms designed to eat through Imperial alloy. His crew, a hand-picked team of veterans and loyalists, boarded quietly. No speeches, no fanfare. They knew the stakes. As the Revenant undocked, Voss contacted him one last time. "If you pull this off, the entire sector changes. The Empire won't recover quickly." Cade's voice was iron. "We're not stopping until they do more than recover. We're not stopping until they fall." Voss's gaze hardened. "Good hunting." The link went dead. Revenant vanished into deep space, and in its wake, one truth echoed across the stars. Nathan Cade had declared war. Not a war for survival, not a war for peace, a war of vengeance, a war of justice, and no Imperial fleet, no admiral, no emperor would escape it. Not this time, not ever again.